Late-night mist clung to the quiet streets of Sterling Heights as a sleek black Cadillac rolled past rows of sleeping homes. Judge Nathaniel Brooks adjusted his tie, letting the jazz hum low beneath the rhythm of his thoughts. Just another peaceful drive after a long day in court. But peace shattered in a blink. Red and blue lights exploded behind him. He pulled over, heart thudding not from guilt, but from knowing exactly how this story plays out. The officer stepped out, tall, tense, her hand resting a little too close to her holster. License and registration, no greeting, no reason. Nathaniel spoke calmly. "Is there a problem, officer?" She didn't answer, just scanned his face like she was looking at a suspect, not a judge. In that moment, he knew his robe, his record, his reputation. None of it mattered. Tonight, all she saw was his skin. Nathaniel Brooks wasn't just a man who wore a robe in court. He was the kind of judge whose words carried weight not just because of his title, but because of the decades it took to earn it. And yet, that night, none of it mattered. As he sat motionless behind the wheel of his Cadillac, his fingers loosened slightly from the steering wheel, then tightened again. The jazz station he loved played on, but the music no longer touched him. The officer's flashlight beam cut through the windshield, slicing across his face. Her posture screamed suspicion before she even spoke. Officer Maddox, young, sharp-eyed, and clearly already made up her mind, Nathaniel could read her movements like he read depositions with practiced accuracy. She leaned in. "Step out of the vehicle." "Is there a reason for this?" he asked, his tone neutral, rehearsed, careful. She didn't answer. Instead, her hand hovered again near the holster. It wasn't a request, it was a warning. Nathaniel exhaled slowly. He opened the door, stepped out into the cold Michigan night, and stood tall, his coat swaying slightly with the wind. He didn't resist. He didn't speak. He just waited. Maddox circled him slowly, sizing him up like a suspect from a case file. "We've had reports of a vehicle matching this description reported stolen. Black Cadillac, late model. This car is mine, registered under my name. I can show you the papers." On the hood. Now, it wasn't about the car. Nathaniel knew that. It was about something older, deeper, harder to name. He placed his hands flat on the hood. The metal was still warm. He imagined the curtains behind the windows around them twitching, eyes peeking out, whispers forming, a black man, a cop, a scene. As she patted him down roughly, he thought of his courtroom, of the defendants who stood trembling before him. Knowing the system already saw them as guilty, now he was them. "Your ID," she said, taking his wallet from his pocket. "Judge Nathaniel Brooks." "Suits," he stated clearly. "I live 2 blocks from here. This is my neighborhood." She froze for half a second, not enough for most to notice, but he did. Still, she kept going, called it in, waited. Minutes passed like hours. Nathaniel remained still, his breath fogging in front of him. Finally, a crackle on her radio. "Maddox, stand down. He's clear. That's Judge Brooks. I repeat, Judge Brooks. Beer." Silence. She lowered her radio, took a step back. "There appears to have been a misunderstanding." "No." He said, voice like stone. There was a presumption. She didn't reply. She just nodded stiffly and turned away. Nathaniel stood for a moment longer before straightening his jacket, re-entering his car, and driving off. But he wasn't heading home. He drove instead to City Hall, empty at this hour, but he had a keycard inside the quiet building, under the humming fluorescence. He sat in a small conference room and stared at his reflection in the darkened window. He had spent his life believing the system could be made just, that if you rose high enough, followed the rules, earned the robe, you would be protected from the poison underneath it all. Tonight, that illusion had been stripped away like cheap paint in the rain. The next morning, he asked for a meeting with Police Chief Alvarez. What happened to me, he told the chief, was not an isolated incident. It was the result of training, of mindset, of culture. Sawan. Alvarez was defensive at first, claimed protocol, just following leads. Nathaniel leaned in. She had her hand on her gun. She never saw me as a man, only as a threat. That starts with how you train your officers. Alvarez, to his credit, listened and offered something unexpected. Would you be willing to speak to the department, maybe help run a workshop? Nathaniel didn't hesitate. Yes, but only if Officer Maddox is in the room. The following week, he stood before 24 officers in a cramped briefing room. Maddox was there, arms folded, jaw locked. He told his story, word for word, not with bitterness, but with quiet, devastating clarity. He didn't ask for sympathy. He asked for reflection. When he finished, he looked at Maddox. Do you remember that night? She nodded once. Did you believe I was a threat? A long pause. I didn't know who you were, she finally said, and that justified how you treated me. Another pause. I followed protocol. Sometimes, he said, protocol is the problem. So, a week later, Maddox showed up at his courtroom. No orders, no program, just curiosity. She sat quietly in the back and watched as he handled 3 cases back to back. Each one involved young men of color. Each one revealed cracks in the system she thought she understood. At the end of the day, she waited outside his chambers. May I speak with you, Judge Brooks? Of course, Ed. I think I need to see more. I didn't realize what it looked like from your side. He nodded. Then keep watching. Over the next few weeks, she shadowed him in court, in mediation, in pre-trial conferences. She began to see the patterns, the weight, the faces. One afternoon, after a particularly harsh sentencing hearing, she pulled him aside. They don't stand a chance, do they? Not if we keep pretending the system is neutral. He replied. She looked down, ashamed. I'm sorry for that night, truly. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Don't just apologize. Help me fix it. She nodded. Where do we start? He smiled. Right here. But neither of them knew then that the real storm was still coming, that what happened on that street corner was only the spark, that beneath their feet, something far darker was waiting to be exposed. And when it came to light, everything would change. The next morning, Maddox returned to the courtroom. She sat through arraignments and sentencing, quiet as a shadow. Taking notes she didn't share. The transformation wasn't sudden. But Nathaniel noticed the shift. Her eyes no longer scanned the room for threats. They scanned for truths. During breaks, she asked questions. Why was he given bail but not the last guy? Why is the public defender juggling 6 cases at once? He answered every question with patience, offering not lectures but stories, real lives caught in the machinery. One morning, she asked to see the juvenile docket. Why, he asked. She shrugged. Because I think that's where it starts. She was right. That day, they watched a 15-year-old boy sob as he was denied diversion for a petty theft charge. His mother, exhausted and furious, tried to argue but was silenced by bureaucracy. Outside the courtroom, Maddox stood still for a long time. That boy will be back here in 5 years, as a defendant, and will act surprised. Nathaniel simply nodded, unless someone decides to break the cycle. Their connection deepened, not friendship, not mentorship. Something between the two, a fragile alliance born of shared clarity. One afternoon, Nathaniel invited her to sit in on a mediation between two families, one white, one black, both involved in a neighborhood dispute that had escalated toward violence. It wasn't a legal proceeding, just conversation. But in that room, Maddox saw what she never had in uniform, how quickly misunderstanding grows into hatred, how law alone can't mend what society breaks. Afterward, Maddox stayed behind. I joined the force to help people. I never knew how broken it all was. Nathaniel studied her. Then maybe it's time to help from the inside. She raised an eyebrow. Like what? Internal affairs. He shook his head. Policy, training, presence, changing how the job sees people and how people see the badge. One night, she invited him to ride along. He hesitated. You want me in your patrol car? Just one shift. You see my world, I see yours. Fair. It was more than fair. So he did. They cruised quiet streets, responded to noise complaints. A domestic call, a flat tire on the highway, nothing explosive, but everywhere they went. Nathaniel watched how people tensed, eyes widened, the slight flinch when Maddox approached. They don't trust us, she said, not needing to ask, because they expect not to be believed. He replied. It was around midnight when they pulled into a gas station and saw 2 young men being questioned by another officer. It looked routine, but Nathaniel noticed the stance, the aggression, the hand near the holster. Again, Maddox stepped out and approached slowly. Everything okay here, Officer Brennan? The younger cop glanced up, annoyed. They were loitering. The boys said nothing. One had tears in his eyes. You run their names? She asked. Not yet. She did it herself, both clean, no warrants, local addresses. She turned to Brennan. Let them go. He hesitated. We should at least, I said, let them go. He stepped back. Nathaniel watched it all. Power, restrained and redirected, not by force, but by clarity. As they drove away, he said, you changed the outcome of their night. Maybe their lives. She didn't smile. I almost didn't. The next day, word of the gas station incident reached the precinct. Maddox was called into a private meeting. The captain's tone was civil, but clipped. We appreciate initiative, officer, but overstepping another cop on duty, that makes noise. I did what I thought was right, she replied. And now we have a complaint from Officer Brennan. Chain of command matters. Maddox left the office furious. But what stung more was the look some of her colleagues gave her. Suspicion, betrayal, like she had chosen the wrong side. She met Nathaniel that evening. Her shoulders were tense, her voice low. They're starting to push back. He nodded. They will. The system protects itself. She hesitated, then spoke. Years ago, when I was new, I stopped a teenager outside a 7-Eleven. He was nervous, gave me attitude. I cuffed him. Turned out, he was waiting for his dad inside. Nathaniel said nothing. I never apologized. I convinced myself it was just a mistake, but it wasn't. I didn't see him. I saw a pattern I was trained to expect. He finally spoke, and now I wonder how many others I didn't see. Later that week, Nathaniel introduced Maddox to a local non-profit leader, Carmen Davis, who worked with youth re-entry programs. Carmen had seen it all. Broken homes, probation traps, school-to-prison pipelines. She didn't sugarcoat anything. You want to help, she said to Maddox. Then stop playing defense. Start asking who built the damn field, It stuck with her. That weekend, Maddox requested to join the department's community outreach program, not as PR, as presence. She spent Saturdays at youth centers, helped expunge minor records, spoke to high schoolers. She didn't preach, she listened. She started organizing listening sessions with residents, real talks, raw feedback, sometimes hard to hear, but necessary. And when a group of teens challenged her directly, accused her of being just another uniform with a badge and a lecture, she didn't flinch. You're right to question me. I would too. But I'm here because I screwed up before, and I'm trying not to again, and... Word began to spread. Some officers scoffed, called her soft, others were curious. Nathaniel stayed steady in his chambers, but watched from a distance, proud and wary, because he knew this kind of change didn't come without backlash. And the deeper you dig into the ground, the closer you get to what's buried. And something was buried in Sterling Heights, something big. Soon, they'd find it. The first clue came not in a courtroom or patrol car, but in a manila folder left anonymously on Judge Brooks's desk. There was no note, just paperwork, building permits, inspection records, financial statements from a local construction firm called Apex Developments. Something about them didn't add up. He flipped through the pages late into the night, connecting dots he didn't even know were on the same page, missing signatures, duplicate forms, inspectors clearing properties that had never been visited. It stank of something bigger. The next morning, he called Maddox. "Meet me at the diner, the one near 8th Street." She showed up in plain clothes, eyes sharp. "What's going on?" He slid the folder across the booth. "Tell me what you see." She sifted through the pages, frowned. "This looks like fraud, serious fraud, and these sign-offs are with some of these names are police liaisons, including Captain Reyes." Nathaniel nodded. "It gets worse. The city council fast-tracked funding for Apex last quarter. Half of those contracts were unopposed. No bids, no review." Maddox leaned back. "So this goes beyond the department, way beyond, and if we push too fast, it'll disappear." For the next 2 weeks, they worked in secret, late nights, burner phones, encrypted drives. Nathaniel looped in only 2 others, Carmen from the nonprofit and an old law clerk named Theo with deep research skills and an ironclad NDA. They found more, emails between Apex and precinct officials, memos redacting safety violations, internal complaints filed and buried. And then, a name they weren't expecting, Councilman Avery Locke. Avery had built his campaign on transparency and reform. He spoke eloquently about justice and equity. He was also on Apex's payroll. Maddox stared at the screen. He's the keynote speaker for the city's Community Integrity Gala next month. Nathaniel didn't smile. That speech is going to age badly. The breakthrough came when Carmen introduced them to an Apex whistleblower, a junior accountant named Marcus, mid-30s, nervous, brilliant with numbers. He met them in a church basement, wouldn't speak until Maddox put her badge on the table. "You don't know how deep this goes," he said. "It's not just dirty buildings or shady inspections. It's hush money, off-the-books overtime, officers being paid to redirect homeless encampments off Apex property before site visits." He handed over a thumb drive. "If this leaks, I'm gone. You won't find me." Maddox promised nothing, only nodded. Nathaniel thanked him, then turned to her. "We have enough. It's time, Time for what? That was the hard part. They couldn't go to internal affairs. Reyes was in deep. They couldn't trust city investigators. One of the names on Apex's contractor list matched the spouse of a deputy attorney, so they went wide. National. Nathaniel called in a favor from an old colleague, now with the U.S. Attorney's Office. Within 48 hours, A federal team was reviewing files. Within 72, subpoenas were flying. That's when the threat started. Nathaniel came home to his mailbox smashed. Denise found a dead bird on the porch. Theo's tires were slashed. Maddox got pulled from patrol and reassigned to desk duty. No explanations, no appeal. She sat across from Nathaniel in his study, staring at nothing. "They want us quiet," she said. "Then we get louder." He replied, "They did." They gave their story to a national journalist who specialized in municipal corruption. She spent a week embedded with them, reviewing files, interviewing witnesses. Then the headline dropped. Blueprints and badges, the scandal eroding Sterling Heights. The city erupted. News vans swarmed City Hall. Citizens filled town halls. Protesters marched with signs outside Apex construction sites. Councilman Locke denied everything. Captain Reyes went silent. The mayor issued a vague statement about transparency and ongoing investigations. But the pressure worked. The state attorney general announced a task force. FBI agents walked into the Sterling Heights precinct one morning and walked out with boxes. Maddox was reinstated, but the damage was done. Half her precinct avoided her. A few tried intimidation. One officer left a note on her locker, "Rat it." She didn't flinch. Nathaniel kept presiding over courtrooms now tinged with suspicion. Every case that touched the city felt radioactive. Defense attorneys filed motions citing bias. Prosecutors were shaken, but he didn't back down. One morning, Theo brought him a file. "Judge, you should see this. A case from 5 years ago, involving Apex, the inspector who cleared the building. He died last year, but his report was altered. The original flagged safety hazards that were redacted later." Nathaniel opened the file and stopped. The altered document bore the signature of an assistant city manager, one he'd recently seen at a charity gala. Smiling, toasting. He closed the file. "Keep digging." That week, Carmen hosted a town forum. Hundreds showed up. Maddox sat on the panel. So did Marcus, the whistleblower. When Carmen passed the mic to Maddox, the room hushed. "I wore this badge for years without asking what it meant to the people I claimed to protect. I thought doing my job was enough. I was wrong." Silence. "But I'm here now, because I've seen what happens when good people stay silent. I'm not silent anymore." Applause, and a few angry stares. Late one evening, Nathaniel drove past an Apex site. It had been shut down, fencing pulled away, signs removed. But he noticed something odd. 2 men in suits walking through the rubble. Not workers, no safety gear, just talking. He snapped a photo, sent it to Theo. The reply came an hour later. "Those two, one works for a state senator, the other Apex legal counsel." It never ends, he thought. But then again, neither would he. The case blew wider. Indictments were handed down. A special prosecutor was assigned. The city manager resigned. Councilman Locke fled the state. And Captain Reyes, he was arrested trying to leave the country. On a quiet morning, nearly a year after the traffic stop that started it all, Nathaniel stood outside the courthouse. He looked out at a city still healing, still raw. Maddox joined him. No words, just presence. He handed her a folded piece of paper. She opened it. A copy of her original complaint form never submitted. On the back, in Nathaniel's handwriting, "No justice without discomfort. No change without risk." She folded it back. "So what now?" He smiled. "Now we build something that can't be bought?"